And I believe we're on. This is the abolition meeting for Saturday night. That's what we do, the new abolitionist movement. Greetings, peace to the abolitionists, and death to these oppressors, as always. This is Johanna and Elia here, live real time. It is January 9th, 2016, 7 o'clock, where I'm at in the Central States. As you can see here from that KC, go Chiefs. You know, I'm a KC boy. We just had through having a big victory, first round of wild card there. So shout out to them Chiefs. We are recording this as we're beginning. Send out a little reminder to Facebook and Twitter that we're on air with a live blab, a live meeting, and start getting folks coming to the meeting. Let's see here. Come on in to the meeting. Saturday night abolitionist meeting. If you dare to abolitionist meeting, if you dare to come on in and speak against the system or learn what you may not know or speak on what you already know or what you may have experienced and didn't know what the name for it was, modern slavery and human trafficking. So let's go here. So we'll post that. Come on into the meeting and I'll be able to see you when you get here. We're going to tweet this out. Abolition of modern slavery, mass incarceration. Saturday night. Abolitionist meeting. Come on in. Well, we're going to see how that goes. So came on here last week, was our first meeting. Came in as a guest, kind of a backup host, listening to Scotty Reed as he chopped it up with dozens of people that decided to join in with him while he was here last week. And then Scotty and myself came in and did a sound check, so to speak, on my systems on this end to make sure we had good sound and could produce a program through my systems, and everything was all good. And before we knew it, we had people coming on in to join us, and I wanted to be a part of this abolitionist meeting we were having. So that went well. I think we started at around 8 p.m. This was Wednesday. No, this was Thursday night because the regular new abolitionist radio programs on Wednesday night. Thursday night, everything went well with the sound, and we, got our thing up and going and just started chatting about modern day slavery a little bit. And before you know it, we had people showing up in the chat room and people coming in, wanted to chat with us about slavery and prisons, and they didn't believe us and they liked it. They didn't like it. We had one guy came in and did the classic, I'm not a racist stuff. Guy came in and it started out like he was our friend. He's going to tell us that he agrees. He's all with us and he agrees with us and everything we're saying sounds great. You guys are great. And it just kept going and going from there. He just started to slowly fall apart. His support, he was a fake ally. His support started to wane. And I noticed the guy had a bottle in his hand of looked like red wine that he was just openly he would take a chug from it and sit it down, and he's getting hyped and he's telling us all this whatever he knows and thinks and believes about how he agrees with us or whatever. And at one point he just flipped on us. He started accusing Scotty of being against corporations and against capitalism. And I mean, to whatever extent that capitalism is propped up by slavery, then yes, we are. Because slavery creates a system where capitalism can even exist, in the form that we have experienced here in America anyway. When you steal the land, you have to enslave people to to work the land. You have to enslave people to produce the products. You have to enslave people to transport, to prepare, to maintain, to oversee, to dispose of. I mean, every aspect of the westernized capitalism that we've witnessed in America anyway. That's all I can really speak for from experience and through in-depth history and research is that here in America, this capitalism has always required free labor and slavery and extortion and exploitation, devaluation of human life. So that's been my experience. And I know that without slavery, then there would not be any basis for this capitalist system that we're a part of. So that's what we talk about. So at any rate, we got into that with him. He tried to fight with Scotty over Ayn Rand, some quotes or what have you, and just, started getting into it. Then pretty soon it just became just kind of belligerent and mean spirited. And there was really no point in letting him talk over us and talk crazy or whatever. So we had to push the bro right on out the chat room there and move on with the program. Had another lady come in and got in depth with us. So, we went on and on for quite a while talking with her and explaining slavery, and, she's agreeing and understanding and learning some things. And when I finally got out of the meeting, and it wasn't even really supposed to be a meeting. Like I said, it was a sound check for Scotty Reed and myself. And when I finally left out, I mean, I had to go to work the next morning. It was between 12:30 and 1 a.m. my time. And a lot of these people were East Coast. So it was, after 1 a.m., near 2 o'clock in the morning. And these people were still up, like energized by the conversation. So that is encouraging that people care about it. And once they learn a little bit about it, they want to know more. And, that's all fine and good that's how things go. So that's what we're here for, is to teach and to help people understand what they're dealing with and what we're up against. So once again, that was a good thing. I think Scotty Reed may join us at some point, but I know he was doing a program tonight himself. So that's another reason how I ended up coming in tonight as the guest host, which I, of course, love to do. Come in here and talk about what we talk about all the time. Let me just send Scotty a message right quick. See if he's going to come on the program at all tonight, or is it going to be just myself here? Because what I'm going to do is just start reading the headlines and breaking down what's going on for y'all. And then that way, what we'll do is just put the information out there, and you can see what I deal with on a day-to-day. Let me open up my Gmail, because this is how it goes down right here. I got to close this out. I shouldn't be looking at this. This is not going to have me in a good place in my head. So let me just get that out of the way. But yeah, so from my Gmail, this is a way that you can become a modern slavery abolitionist yourself. I mean, other than obviously participating in programs or events that we discuss on the on the Move to Abolish 21st Century Slavery group page that we have on Facebook, or if you want to find us on the New Abolitionist Radio on Facebook, then of course that's all fine and good. Come and join in and be a part of what we're doing. But if you just want to on your own, you want to be a bandit abolitionist, you don't need to join in with us. That's fine. Stand strong on your own square, soldier. What I'm going to do is give you some tips that I use that helps me to be effective at what I'm doing and stay abreast and in the know with the knowledge of what's happening out here. What I have is a series of what are called Google Alerts. When I started Google Alerts, on my email account, what I had was Google Alerts for police shootings, mass incarceration, youth incarceration, prison health care, private prisons, school to prison pipeline, youth incarceration. Let me see. I have some specific companies like Corrections Corporation of America, the #1 largest private prison company on the planet. And then the Geo Group right there on their heels, #2. Both of them multi-billion-dollar revenue generating companies year in, year out. And that is strictly made off of modern day slavery and human trafficking. Companies like Horizon Healthcare, Wexford Healthcare, the Management and Training Corporation, which is, I believe, #3 or 4 on the list of largest private prison companies. So these are the kind of alerts that you create for yourself. And what you do is you set yourself up where oh, hey, hello there, sister. Peace to you. You set yourself up to where you can follow the news as it unfolds about these different types of stories. So as the chat room is kind of filling up and the word is kind of starting to get out, I put out a couple of alerts and communicated with Scotty and Max, my co-hosts, co-producers of the regular New Abolitionist radio program, as they spread the word a little bit too. I'm sure more folks will come along. And like I already said, when we were just in here doing a sound check the other night, it got pretty live, and it didn't take long. So folks will show up as they will. But as I was saying, as we go into these Google alerts, what you can do is set it up so your email will get alerts on news stories that are going on about these different topics. So that is definitely helpful for me to stay abreast of what is going on at any given time every day. And what we've seen over the last couple of years is that there's just not enough time. Like on the weekly program, New Abolitionist Radio, we're not able to talk about all of the news that's going on. We only cover 4, maybe 5 news stories each week. And then we have regular segments where we go in depth about what we call the modern Underground Railroad, individuals who are able to be exonerated or have their sentences vacated, charges dropped against them typically after serving several years, decades, lifetime in prison, and then they're released, after all these years, after they finally just can't deny, that what they've been put through is criminal and that the charges were false against them in the first place. So you see people getting out on those types of situations. And that's what we call the modern Underground Railroad, 21st century Underground Railroad segment, where we'll talk about those types of stories. We also do a series called America is Ferguson, which we came up with, of course, on the heels of the Ferguson uprising and the people being upset not only about Michael Brown being murdered, and then subsequently our dear brother, young son, nephew, who was martyred himself for the cause, Kajemi Powell, as the police, told a story that he had come, running at the police with a knife out and this and that. And we found out that was a lie as soon as the video footage was released, and the police actually lied and didn't know that he basically set that up to show just how easy it is to be murdered by law enforcement. So we started doing the America's Ferguson series in response to the Department of Justice report that came out detailing the modern day slavery environment that is going on in St. Louis and the surrounding suburban areas like Ferguson. And Ferguson wasn't even the worst of the cities in that 10, 20 mile radius around that area. Is just ridiculous. The policing for profit is off the chain. I mean, this is also where the idea came from our regular New Abolitionist radio program, that these people should be brought up on RICO charges. This is a continuing criminal conspiracy to defraud, to extort, to kidnap and enslave, private citizens of the United States of America. So this is a continuing criminal conspiracy. When you have Department of Justice reports that, and this is not just Ferguson, but across the country, there's been dozens of Department of Justice investigations of law enforcement agencies, municipal agencies around the country for years, and they continually tell you straight out, we found patterns and practices of racist policing, race-based policing, racial profiling, um, constitutional violations of the citizens' rights. So on and on, these things are always detailed, but there are no criminal charges typically brought against these people. And that is our major gripe against the whole situation. I mean, if you or I are found as being in violation of the law, hell, we can be suspected of being in violation of the law. We don't have to be found guilty of it. This is where the term extrajudicial comes from. When you say an extrajudicial murder, a person like a Kajimi Powell, a Michael Brown, on and on and on. Thousands this year. There was, I think, already been like 1,100 black people that have been killed, and some, well into 2,000-3,000 people this year across the country, of all races, killed by the police. So there's not a Max Parthis joined. Welcome, Max Parthis. It's an open seat here for you, brother. Max Parthis, the co-host and co-producer, poet extraordinaire, abolitionist extraordinaire, and all that, and then some more. Join the chat room, so hopefully you get a chance to speak his piece or come on in here. At any rate, these are the things that we discuss on the regular program, and and Max is the one that is the power behind, the force behind the America is Slavery segment. As we just suggested it amongst ourselves in the planning meetings, Max has really fleshed that thing out and is able to show state by state in the cities within each state the criminal patterns and practices of these law enforcement agencies, state agencies, from law enforcement up through, who does the hiring, the education system, on and on and on, the businesses that are owned by, the different ratios of races that are represented. Across all states, blacks are typically incarcerated at, at least 400 or 500 times the rates of every other race. In some states, it's been well into the 1,000, over 1,000 times is incarcerated. So you go into a state like a Delaware, you go into a state like Maine, you go into a state like Iowa, there may be a 1%, 2% population of blacks in the entire state, but blacks represent, 65% of the entire population of the jails and prisons in the state. So these are the things that the America is Ferguson series covers. And for us to be able to get that information, as I started out with all of this saying, the Google Alerts is a great tool for just getting up-to-date information. And then, of course, learning how to do deeper and deeper research into these things. So I would recommend that any of you that come across this program or that may be with us here tonight, just go into your Gmail account, go into your options to set up Google Alerts for yourself. And I would definitely go with, private prisons, prison profits, school to prison pipeline, youth incarceration, mass incarceration, police shootings, prison health care, immigration detention, these types of keywords and long tail, as they call it, long tail keywords that will help you to be very specific about what type of news you want to come right to your inbox when the latest is out there. And we've got, right now I went from setting up my email to receive this, and I regularly have over 2,000 emails at any given time. So it's always a problem for me to continue to try to follow everything that goes on, because there's so much out there, and it's amazing how much is out there when you compare it to how silent the people you and I know are. I mean, people know that I do this. People know that Max does this. People know that Scotty Reed started an entire radio network, started website and blogging, and started, giving us the ability to do these podcasts like New Abolitionist Radio. Max has been, helping to publish all sorts of, whether it's music or people's poetry set to music, whether it's abolitionist readings or important historical information that he's able to put out. So people know that these brothers do this type of thing. People know me, know I do this, whether it's at work or church or wherever. home in the community, wherever I'm at. People know that I do this, friends and family. And it's amazing to me that everybody that knows this, I'm saying all this to say, everybody that knows this still is the general populace is still very silent when you consider the magnitude of information that is out there. When I have 2,600 email notifications from Google alerts based on this type of information, that is mind-blowing how much information is out there. Max Parthis in the house, y'all.
What's up, man? How you doing?
Hey, what's going on, sir? Peace to you. I can hear you. You got a little bit of echo. Yeah, you're a little bit.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry.
We kind of got that lapse in time. It'll sync up. It'll sync up.
Yeah, I don't usually do the video thing, but I said, what the hell today? You know what I mean?
Yeah. I'm glad you came in, man. Some stuff
where I heard some of the conversation, man.
Yeah, just breaking it down of the basics of how to become an abolitionist for some, some of the easier ways to get into the information. I was just explaining about setting up Google alerts for all these different topics that we discuss and we know, relate to the prison situation. So I was just discussing setting up Google alerts so you can stay in the know. And that's definitely helped me. Did you have anything
it's been like a village. It's like a village for me. There's a lot of people that I depend on to seek out information, and there's more than enough constant information for everybody to find different shit, and I keep in contact with them. I follow what they're doing, and every now and then I'll get something that can really lend a big hand to what we're doing, and I think everybody does that, and we're growing exponentially. Really, the whole thing when it comes to abolition is the reason we're not fighting as abolitionists is because of lack of information. People simply don't know yet. We don't have that 45% of the people who are anti-slavery because they haven't even had a slavery discussion. I mean, they don't talk about it like that, So really getting it out there like the way we've been doing with New Abolitionist Radio and all of the other media content that comes along with that and our allies has been making huge impacts and big differences. And often it just comes from what that one individual has decided to do, to write or say. Did you read about the teacher who was recently fired for teaching her students about the Central Park 5?
I did hear mention of it, but I didn't get into reading the story as yet. Do you have a link to it, or I can open one up here pretty quick? Okay.
Yeah, it's on my page.
Okay.
I got a link on the Max Parthis page, and I think I may have shared it on New Abolitionist Radio, but it's already starting to explode. The Central Park 5 have come out in defense of this teacher. From what I understand, the school said they didn't want her to teach this history because it would rile up the black students. Now, when have we heard that before? That's from 1860. You know what I mean? Like, you better not teach them black people about what's going on.
Okay, I got it up here now. I can read it to the audience here right quick, just what's going on with it. This is from the New York Daily News. It says a teacher at an Upper West Side high school was fired for creating a curriculum with lessons about the Central Park 5 that administrators feared would, quote unquote, rile up black students. Like you said, man, this is damn 1865. That would rile up black students, according to a new federal lawsuit. Says English teacher Jenna Lee Walker said her bosses at the high school for arts imagination, white supremacist imagination, clearly, and inquiry urged her in November 2013 to become more, quote unquote, balanced in her approach to the racially charged Central Park jogger case that ended with 5 black and Latino teens being exonerated after spending several years in prison for the attack. Wow. They told her that lessons could, they told her that lessons could create little riots, according to court papers. I was stunned, she told the Daily News. I was kind of like, the facts are the facts. This is what happened. The boys went to jail and lost 14 to 18 years of their lives. How can you say that in a more balanced way? It says, although Lee Walker, 37, agreed to soften her approach, she argued that students in general and black students in particular should be riled up. I kind of wanted to hook them in, engage them, and win them over, she said. I thought that this material was not only engaging, but important. And one of the things, too, about this, it's an uncanny bit of information to add to this, in my opinion, just seeing this is, Jenna Lee Walker is a Asian lady. And, over the last year, 2 years, we've had Asian women have been some of the leading voices in the abolitionists of, informing people on the abolition of slavery. Like, who was the lady that came on with Scotty that had the Huffington Post story?
Yes.
That was saying that, slavery was not abolished. Angela Chan. Then we got Naomi Murakawa,
right,
Princeton professor of African studies, who wrote the first civil right, talking about how Democrats were just as responsible, or not more so, for creating the mass incarceration problem. Mm-hmm.
I saw an article later on which came out.
No, you're fine.
I hope
you're
I don't
fine.
sound too terrible. If I'll try to keep the mic up. Okay, I saw an article that came out today where they implied that a lot of the reasoning behind limiting what the students can be taught is because they feel that the young people of today are not as strong-willed, aren't able to handle life's circumstances as much as generations before them, is what they implied. Whereas I think the opposite is actually true. You have to think of it like this. What these young people are facing today has never been seen before in human history, never been seen before in this country. The numbers and statistics are simply overwhelming. When you start looking at 1,200 people killed by police, several thousand dying in jails and prisons, the number of African Americans that we report on every week in the Ferguson is America series, where it's hunting ground, where you find out that 20% of a prison population come from one neighborhood. Like, oh my God, are you serious? So they're facing things that nobody's ever had to face before, and they're doing it courageously. We had a student contact us yesterday who showed us a picture of a "fuck the police" hoodie that she was wearing, and they wanted to suspend her. They was about to suspend her for wearing that. I suggested she contact the ACLU, but nonetheless, that was really limiting her truth that she saw and experienced it. And you can't do that to these students. They need to express what they know. It's whatever it may be, and they challenge these long-held lies as untrue. You can't just silence them. You can't tell them not to tell somebody. If the Central Park Five, who may have been the catalyst for the largest mass incarceration push in the history of this country, if that was the case, the students need to know that.
I agree.
And I think that the Central Park Five was one of the major catalysts that was used to push this mass incarceration agenda by the Clintons and by Reagan before that.
Greetings.
Remember, Donald Trump bought a full-page ad in several newspapers asking for the death penalty for those 5 kids.
Yeah, he's not speaking on that now, and he's not being called to task on that now. This is the irresponsible behavior that we've come to grow used to from these type of reactionary dumbasses like Donald Trump. These people that get a chance to speak on these things and they're not educated. These people have not read a book. They have not attended a meeting with anybody that's a serious activist or seriously educated about these issues. They just get a platform and they just start just whatever comes to their little pea brain, it just comes out, or whatever they're programmed to say, they just say it. And like I said, now we've never heard Donald Trump be called to the table on making those kind of, I mean, he invested money in putting that out there, not just said it, but to put that out there like that. And these men are all exonerated and have become millionaires as a result of getting their pay for being wrongfully accused and incarcerated and abused and what have you. So, I mean, he's going for being president of our nation right now. That's ridiculous. Welcome, Scotty Reed. We didn't get a chance to welcome you in.
Yeah.
Greetings, guys. Is my audio okay?
Yeah, you sound fine, bro.
All right. Max, Oh man, what a wonderful surprise! Cause I know you out there in the woods, man. I know what your internet situation been like out there, but you were going to audio only, and props to Blab for just
I'm getting a connection blocked by a firewall message for Scotty here for some reason.
Yeah,
it
it's
buffering.
yeah.
It's just buffering, man. But greetings, guys. Dang, Johanna, I couldn't find you.
What's
Not
that?
quite sure what to
I
do.
said it was hard finding because I had already.
Getting a message that says maybe Scotty may be blocked by a firewall, so I can't see him or hear him.
Go ahead, Scotty.
Hey, in any case, brother, I can't stay too long. We got company tonight, so I'm gonna have to sign out for now. I didn't have to go. I just want to drop by and say a few words. I know you guys are gonna hold it down and handle it. Hopefully, I get to spend some more time with you next Saturday. In the meantime, if anybody's listening, make sure this Wednesday you show up for New Abolitionist Radio. If you heard last week, we had Nancy Shelley on, who showed this chart that she had put together on the circumstances we face with police brutality and the profitization and privatization of prisons. Well, she did that on slavery. She finished the project on slavery, at least halfway finished. So I'm hoping we can get her back in to show us all about that. Show the historical connection.
All right, peace, Max.
Meantime, peace, guys.
Okay. What were you saying, Scotty, about you couldn't find the broadcast? Because what now?
Because it wasn't on the front page. It was not easy to find.
So what do I need to do? I mean,
no, it's not nothing that you could do.
Oh, okay.
Max kind of alluded to it when he talked about stuff being blocked, but I'm not making any accusations or anything.
I see what you said. Okay, I'll follow you, bro. Well, what we're gonna keep doing is we're gonna keep stroking anyway. So as I was saying, when I opened up this evening, I was just telling
about 10,000. We host abolitionists. Farrakhan said he was looking for 10,000 fearless, and by coincidence, they supposed to be guests on the radio station. Of course, on blacktalkradionetwork.com, but local it seemed to be grassroots, and they're policing their own community, and they got written on the side, 10,000 fearless men. So we'll see how that go. I'm sure people will, provide their own reports and provide it to us online. But yeah, they're supposed to be guests on the radio program. But yeah, so I didn't know that you had started the show, and I hadn't heard from you, so I was like, man, we supposed to have the second abolitionist meeting. I mean, who else is having a real abolitionist meeting? And but we want to thank Blab for providing this platform to allow us to speak, even if they may not want to, put us on the front page. I don't know, because, some people find it controversial when you say slavery has never been abolished. It goes against that matrix programming, because the teachers, like Max was talking about, teachers teaching our children that slavery was abolished after the Civil War. Washington, D.C., House Speaker Ryan had a big commemoration, and the president, the CEO of USA Inc., Obama, gave speeches, and they didn't even have, the text of the 13th Amendment on the wall nowhere. Didn't even give it a paper banner, and so what are they hiding? And we had James Cleveland. Yeah, let me give my abolitionist report, because, whenever we make strides towards the abolitionist goal, you've heard of I Am One of the Million. You've heard of them, Johanna? I Am One of the Million, Afiko. I'm not even going to try to butcher his name, but James Cleveland, he is author, columnist, and whatnot. And he's been talking about the 13th Amendment, man, since the 1980s, he said, that he tried to get with Michelle Alexander but and talk about it, but you know, for whatever reasons that didn't go down. But he was on Black Talk Radio Network yesterday on my program, Black Talk Radio News, and they added the removal of the exception clause in the 13th Amendment as their 18th plank to their political and economic platform. So the name of it's really a movement. It's not an organization. It's they're looking for 2% of the quote unquote black population, according to the U.S. Census, to become contributors, financial contributors, and funding their own political agendas, and also stimulating job creation within the community. So their website is I am one of the million.com. But James Klingman is an author and a scholar in his own right, and he said he's been talking about this, but the mainstream media, they won't touch it. So they've adopted that as part of their 18th plank for the platform. So, I would say that, that's a step forward in converting abolitionists, just straight out abolitionists, not people pretending to be abolitionists and talking about the guy that was on the other day when you did your test broadcast and talking about, going off all on these tangents about stuff that's already illegal. If you or I was to kidnap somebody off the street and put them to work, you know what I'm saying? And you doing it as a state, as a federal government. So, I view that as a conversion to abolitionism, adding to the numbers. What do you think? We lost your sound, Johanna. At least I don't hear you on my end.
That's because I have myself muted, Scotty. But no, that guy was what we would what you would refer to as a racist suspect, and then he went ahead to prove himself to actually be racist, I think, and how he kind of came apart at the seams. He started off agreeing with us and just begging to get in the conversation, just so he could align himself with us and prove to us that, oh yeah, you guys are brilliant, you guys are spot on. Oh man, I agree. Oh, I totally agree, brother. And going all in, and meanwhile turning up this red wine bottle. And as he got that liquid courage in him, he started getting up in the screen, and he started trying to tell us about how we don't know what we're talking about because that. And next thing you know, he had to get banned on off the show because, yeah, he was sounding like an idiot.
Yeah, he sounded like an operative, as some the people who saw it commented to me. He sounded like a paid troll. I think it was Alex. Alex tried to join South Carolina. Alex Apollo. And, he's a member of the Move to Abolish 21st Century Slavery on Facebook. With what these Saturday night abolitionist meetings are about. So, but hey, also speaking of the group Move to Abolish 21st Century Slavery, I put out a call for any abolitionists that want to host these meetings on this account in a rotating basis. You have to be a member of the group at least 6 months, and of course, we'll be able to.
Yeah, we know who's about it, and who as a kid say, we know who about that life.
Right.
So I was saying when Max came in, I was beginning the meeting and the conversation, detailing to any listeners or guests that have new to this or new to what we're talking about. Just saying one of the first steps and easiest things that you can do to help convince yourself is to set up. I'm hearing like an echo, like a reverb of myself. Is to set up for yourself Google alerts in your personal Gmail account, and in that way you'll be able to see private prisons, prison slavery, mass incarceration, police shootings, police brutality, like these different types of keywords, specific like long tail keywords as they call them, that will set up Google alerts and actually get you notifications as this type of information is coming across. So that's what we were discussing, is how to set that up for yourself. And then you can educate yourself. It doesn't have to be me or Scotty or Max, or it doesn't have to be a group like, Move to Abolish 21st Century Slavery that will be your first introduction to this. And you can battle the cognitive dissonance in the privacy of your own personal email account. And maybe it takes you a couple of days, a couple of weeks, a month or two. It might take you a year or two of just looking at the emails and seeing those alerts as they come across. And I was saying, when I started using those Google alerts for myself, I think I have 14 or 15 different alerts. And when I start using those alerts for myself, my email was typically somewhere around 40 or 50 emails, unread, and I could go through them mostly on a day-to-day. And my email, I haven't seen the other side of 2,000 inboxes in months, because there's dozens and dozens of stories every hour. There's hundreds of stories every day. And they're not always related, or not always the same story. There are so many stories going on. I'm looking at a listing right now. Black students win the battle to make the University of California divest $25 million from the private prisons. This is something that we've been kind of following. We covered it on the New Abolitionist radio program. I believe last week, not this week that just passed, but the week before. And these children are following in the footsteps of like Columbia divest, for example, where they were able to successfully get Columbia University to pull out their investments. And there's been other schools that have done the same, or are getting closer and closer to doing it if they haven't completely done it as yet. But this is a
13th Amendment to them. They know what it is, they know what's going on, or they know more than most masses. Are you still getting that feedback?
No. It seems like it sounds like it's better. Mm-hmm.
You know how I do.
With the sound and stuff, with you on the board, on the mixing board. Mm-hmm. Now are you okay? I couldn't hear anything for a second there, but can you still hear me?
Yeah, I hear you.
Oh, okay. But at any rate, with the students, and like you said, mentioned in the 13th, just for anyone that's just joining us here, the whole point of what we're talking about with abolishing 21st century slavery, new abolitionist movement, when we're talking about slavery, mass incarceration is slavery. And we substantiate that claim by going back to the 13th Amendment itself. And when we go back to the 13th Amendment itself, it says neither slavery nor involuntary servitude. So it's addressing slavery from the start, neither slavery nor involuntary servitude, except as a punishment for crime, whereof the party shall have been duly convicted. So the entire premise of the abolitionist movement is not all that much different from the premise of the original abolitionist movement, when you could see black folks in the earliest days, see black folks and non-whites of whatever ilk chained and beaten and enslaved and extorted, exploited, whatever else, raped, robbed, killed on the spot, what have you. These same treatments and this same purpose of slavery is in place right now. Here and now, today. The American prison system represents 25%, over 25% now, as the population continues to grow, over 25% of the entire planet's incarcerated population. So everybody that's on the planet who is incarcerated currently, if there's 7 billion people on the planet, if there is, 10 million of them, let's say, that's in prisons, well, 25% of those are here in America, and we only represent 5% of the entire planet's population. So the number should blow your mind.
But to that,
go ahead.
Now you think about 2 or 3 corporations, maybe 4 corporations controlling all of that globally.
Right.
With
right.
The group taking over Australia.
Right.
Entire penal system. What you got? G4S.
G4S.
One of Africa's top employers.
Yeah.
Enslaving of the Africans through the prison system owned by what I'm saying? So
Yeah.
it's crazy. And
Yeah.
I earlier I had started a blab, but it's gonna be deleted. But I had the title, and I was thinking this gonna be controversial because I'm declaring war. But it's not like I'm declaring war. I'm saying the war ain't it's not over. And so, what war am I talking about? Well, what time period are we talking about when the 13th Amendment was ratified? What were you taught in school, and the children today still being taught that slavery was abolished? And when one reads the 13th Amendment, ascertains this meaning, there could be, no uh, doubt that slavery was never abolished. And
Right.
this is how their corporations are able to do it, and individuals are able to enslave others, which is the whole point of these students doing these divestment, forcing these universities to divest, because that could be like teacher pensions, that could be who knows what it is. Those students could probably tell you better than me, but because we report on a lot. But yeah, so how can you say civil war is over? You know what I'm saying? There's people still out there fighting behind that Confederate flag. You know what I'm saying? We had a guest, he declared himself a abolitionist. Remember John Sims with the John Sims Project?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah.
Fact, burned and buried.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, got a lot of media coverage. He going around. He was down there when they took their Confederate flag, and now they're
Right.
asking the taxpayers to spend what, $2 million? How much to enslave a fake flag? This ain't even the original battle flag of Virginia, because it's not even a South Carolina flag, but it was adopted by white supremacists.
Right.
And adopted it. And that's, what that represents. Terrorism. That's what, so, you know, but that flag is a replica. That's all it
Yes.
is.
Right.
Why want the one they brought down, after Dylan Roof killed 9 people in a church after praying with him and sitting through, the whole service? That's heinous, man, because this is domestic terrorism, and that's why say the Civil War ain't over, and I say that as a veteran of the United States military.
No, man, it's not. It's not over. And
If that was what the what defined what the victory was and who won and this and that, but as we have always talked about, that was the compromise between the North and the South.
well, it's not over. The Civil War is not over, in as much as we know that the people that were being the
It is not over.
what's that?
Technically, it's not over. It's over.
No, and
You
that's what I'm saying. I mean, the people that are the
a
primary victims and targets of the interests of both sides that are fighting one another in this civil war, the enslaved are still enslaved, and the profit that's derived from their enslavement and their persecution is still the foundation for the capitalist regime that's running the country at this point. So the civil war is going to continue to be engaged as long as there is a slave class, a slave level maintained.
any means necessary. That's
Yeah.
all I'm saying. Right now, I'm following the model of Frederick Douglass and trying to be peaceful and use intellect and pass legislation, but it's going on, 150 years since he was fighting.
Right.
He called it fraud. Man, you have to really check out that interview with the Queen was dropping some knowledge on the fraud of Juneteenth, which we had talked about. And he said, read section 3 that said, when they went to Texas, because the people in Texas, they get news that quote unquote slavery was over, the Civil War was over, and enslaved Africans were free. And so it took them 2 years for the U.S. Army to get there to them people, the last ones that they say, they said through their fake
Right.
history.
Right.
And these orders said that, okay, We recommend that you go back to work for your former enslavers, and you can't around these posts and stuff, because then we're going to arrest you for vagrancy and put you in jail. That's breaking the law.
Hmm.
So Juneteenth, they was practicing, passage of the black codes before maybe perhaps the southern states adopted their own code and codified, recodified the slave. What did they call them? The slave codes, right?
Yeah.
So that's still going on to this day, man. So when you come to that knowledge of the truth, you either going to accept it or your brain's going to reject it because of the programming you got into Steven Spielberg and his movie about Lincoln and all these movies about the Civil War to make people think the question of slavery. Now it's just not just, African descended people. It's everybody, but it's just some to different degrees. But the central question is no matter the racial classification or any of that, is if slavery is wrong, then it's wrong to do it to anyone. So
Yeah. Well, speaking of the when you said that about that Spielberg, that reminded me of this commercial I saw today, man. I'm gonna have to figure out what they're trying to do with this, because the slavery narrative is very very direct. It don't need no fluffing up. It don't need no help going the direction it's going. Slavery is slavery. Like we talk about, you cannot reform slavery. You can't lessen the effects of it. You just stop it. And a lot of times, like you said, with that Steven Spielberg flick about Lincoln and so many other propaganda pieces that have come out, we see how easily these people work to, how easy they make it seem that they can just misdirect the narrative. And I saw a commercial today with Matthew McConaughey playing in this movie called The Free State of Jones. Had you heard about that yet?
The Free State of Jones.
Yeah, it's some kind of movie that's coming out. They said they got a trailer out for it now. Says it's written and directed by 4-time Oscar nominee Gary Ross, who also did The Hunger Games, Seabiscuit, Pleasantville. Says Free State of Jones is an epic drama set during the Civil War and tells the story of a defiant Southern farmer named Newt Knight and his extraordinary armed rebellion against the Confederacy. Banding together with other small farmers and local slaves, Knight launched an uprising that led Jones County, Mississippi, to secede from the Confederacy, creating a free state of Jones. Knight continued his struggle into Reconstruction, distinguishing him as a compelling, if controversial, figure of defiance long beyond the war. So we'll see what kind of take they're going to, put on the slavery narrative now. But I think ultimately this is going to be another one like what you said, where they're just going to ultimately be trying to prove that slavery was abolished, that it's over.
Yeah, I'm gonna put that link to this opportunity. I'm gonna give y'all the wiki page. Y'all can check this. We have put put it for a wiki. You donate and whatnot, invite people to change stuff. You have to, that's part of fighting war, counterintelligence.
Right, controlling the propaganda.
I got a wiki. So I'm gonna put that propaganda film. You telling this lie that is just simply destroyed by anyone reading the 13th Amendment. That again was what James Kingman was talking about yesterday.
Hmm.
I mean, he's an elder scholar in our community. He wrote books about economics and all of that. But that's what he's saying. They're celebrating Juneteenth, and they haven't even read the order that they delivered to enslaved Africans. They ain't care about being the Ku Klux Klan terrorizing black people. Why would they hang around the fort about that?
Right.
For protection from terrorists.
Right. This is not anything new, man. What these people do, these techniques and tactics, it's just like my belief about the what's that?
I said, then it says in there that you'll be arrested, put in jail. Well, that was the convict leasing system.
Right.
I mean, on wheels, all the black railroad workers on that, speaking about fiction and whatnot, the black workers on the railroad, then they had the Chinese workers, what's the character's name? Colin something, and so, but they don't really, they hint at only one scene that I saw in it, where it was made known that the black workers were slaves because he threatened them if they went on strike, we gonna send you back to the prison. So
Mm-hmm.
you get work for $5 an hour, or whatever the low pay they wanted to give them. So you better think about before you go on that work strike, because we'll send you back to the prison. Because they could end up in the mine and work to death. You know what I'm
Oh
saying?
yeah, oh yeah. And now again, that's the continuation of the work they had them doing before that. I don't know if you remember, it's been a couple of years ago. I shared a link to the group and to the pages, and what have you, amongst all the people that I could share it with, that was showing the original insurance policies in some of the original insurance policies in this country. Some of these companies are still in effect. Aetna was one I definitely remember the name of, because Aetna is still big now. Aetna was one of the original companies. And we're talking about insurance policies that were in the double and triple digits. So that's how you know. When you see insurance policies now, your insurance policy, your number might be, 175-237-232 or something. These were policies that were 89, 303, 652. Like, this is how many policies, like back in the beginning of it. And these insurance policies were policies that white slave owners held on their slaves. And
Right.
it showed the jobs that the people did. They had all sorts of trades that black slaves were doing. Trade jobs that are the best paying jobs now in today's American economy. Back then were slave jobs that they were getting blacks to do for free. They would have, not welders, but blacksmiths. And like you said, with that mining, there was dozens of them that they showed that was, that worked in the mines. They had their policies on mine workers, and then it went to the prison labor after slavery. They turned it into prison labor.
But honey, I got to run, man.
Mm-hmm.
I got a radio station.
Right.
Cal's participatory call-in coming up in 2 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
Shout out to you, shout out to man, shout out to all the abolitionists out there.
Indeed.
Y'all jump in, give your report. If you got any questions, I'm sure honey can answer them. So,
oh yeah.
Peace.
All right, peace, brother. Have a good show. Peace, Scotty Reed. Scotty Reed, ladies and gentlemen, the founder, CEO and founder of the Black Talk Media Project, blacktalkradionetwork.com, producer and one of the founders and producer of the regular program every Wednesday evening, New Abolitionist Radio. Scotty Reed has got several news, politics programs that come on day in and day out. And when he's not producing and hosting his own individual programs, of course, he's running the entire network and helping people, just like what he left here now to go do is to produce a program called The Context of White Supremacy, or the Cows. And these brothers are deep. Much respect to the Cows program and all of the Black Talk Radio Network programs. These people are not messing around. The highest order of professionals and intellectuals, professors and teachers and scholars, authors, researchers, attorneys, whatever, coming on the programs and discussing white supremacy head on. Talking about it standing flat footed and talking about it head on with people. Rest in power to our dear mother, Frances Cress Welsing, as she passed on not too long ago here last week. And she was a regular guest on the Context of White Supremacy program and went in depth on her works and discussion on all these things. So the Black Talk Radio Network is the bomb, man. I'm not even going to try to pretend like I can hold back from telling you, how excited I am about being a part of it and what it has done to not only give me a voice, but, dozens and hundreds and even thousands of people to get a voice, to get the grassroots out there to the masses and help influence movements, to help make change for the better for us. And so, that's what we all are tasked with doing. If you all could be a part of that, then definitely there's still going to be a continued fundraising effort for the Black Talk Media Project. Just visit the blacktalkradionetwork.com or blacktalkmediaproject.org websites. You can find us in New Abolitionist Radio on Facebook, or Move to Abolish 21st Century Slavery and Human Trafficking, also a Facebook group. There's several programs. The Abolitionist Daily is coming back. If there's anyone that goes that deep with us that they can remember, several months back, we had a successful program called the Abolitionist Daily, because, like I said earlier, with all the news alerts that come out, it's just not enough time week to week to be able to cover all of those programs on a weekly basis, or cover all those news stories on a weekly basis. So the Abolitionist Daily was a day-to-day 2-hour program that went into detail on all of that. Well, that program will be coming back. And we also know that the New Abolitionist Radio program is every Wednesday night, again, 8 p.m. Eastern, 2-hour program that comes on. Black Talk Radio News is daily program Scotty does. So all of these are outlets to get the word, get the news, get the information out to people. So again, as Scotty said, any of you that are in the chat room listening or commenting, that we can see that you're, here, join with us. This is a format where you have the opportunity to come in. You can join with us. I'd be happy to let you come in. If you got some comments or questions that you want to add to it, then feel free to do that. But beyond that, as I was saying, with the news stories that we were talking about, we almost got into talking about the Black Student Union at the University of California campuses that are bringing about a divestiture, where they're having their schools divest, in some cases, with the Columbia situation, that was several million. And just like with the University of California system, they're talking about taking $25 million, maybe even up to $30 million out of their investment system to stop showing support to these private prisons. So this is from Atlanta Black Star, and shout out to those brothers. They built themselves a powerful media conglomerate as well in a short number of years through just hard work, effort, putting it in every single day. Again, from Atlanta Black Star says they reported back in December that the Black students at the University of California system, which is known collectively as the African Black Coalition, they led an effort to force the university to divest millions of dollars in private prisons. The initiative actually paid off. They're saying now that the institution has agreed to sell off its assets in private prisons for up to $30 million. So they're gonna cash out. So they're no longer supporting, the Geo Group, Corrections Corporation of America, to whatever extent, MTC, Management and Training Corporation. We also mentioned G4S, another one that's a huge, global slavery company. Back in December, the Black student unions of the 9 undergraduate campuses passed a resolution demanding that the university system divest from private prisons and ban all future investments. Further, the students called for the divestment of Wells Fargo as long as it profits from prison privatization, and a reinvestment of the revenues into education or businesses which are owned or run by formerly incarcerated people. So this is the example of the grassroots. I mean, I don't know that it can get any more grassroots, than that. These kids are, they're fighting, man, on the front line. I'm in Kansas City. We had a University of Missouri and Columbia not too long ago. If you remember, the black ball players stood down and said they refused to play. And, that cost millions of dollars for the advertising and that time slot for their games. And it wasn't very long before they were able to get the president of the university removed. So, it's not a thing where we feel like we can't have power. We can't make change with our voice or with our voting or with our spending of our dollars. There was an article I read the other day that was talking about Macy's is closing down several stores. And of course, there's going to be plenty of layoffs. And that's something that people comment about and notice right off. And, oh, wow, I feel sorry for all those people that are losing their jobs. Well, what you should feel sorry for is all the people that are impacted by slavery and enslavement and oppression, yourself included. And that also includes the mom and pop stores, the local business owners that would actually be from your community, keep your dollars circulating in your community, and therefore they will have an obligation to the community versus a store like a Macy's that has nothing to do with your community. You got to go out to where they're at so you can leave your money with them. And there's never going to be any kind of inclusion or any kind of concern about what's going on with you or your people. So it's going to probably hurt worse before it starts to feel good. But if you stay the course, you can get rid of Macy's and 1,000 other companies, you know, that are profiting off of your oppression in the same way. Because, see, Macy's is not going to make a public statement about any of these police murders. Macy's is not going to get involved when there's no indictment of any of these cops that you know, kill little kids. Macy's is not going to show their face at all when people are thrown into prisons, you know, by the millions in this country. Macy's has nothing to say about that. But when the companies are owned by people that you know, people that live in your neighborhood, people that affect and impact your children's lives, stores that your kids want to one day get old enough, I can't wait to go work for Mr. So-and-so or Mrs. So-and-so. I want to work in that store. I want to be, you know, like them, as opposed to saying, well, I guess I'll go to work at Macy's because I really want to go buy some overpriced piece of something they got in there. So I'll work there for a year and save all my little minimum wage checks and spend it all on that one thing. And then something happens to your child, God forbid, on the way to work at Macy's, and Macy's ain't gonna say a thing. They're gonna get another one to replace them. We can protect ourselves and our dollars and our family when we keep, you know, things in perspective and keep the circle amongst ourselves, so to speak. I'm not entirely a segregationist, but I do believe in black first. I'm not going to sit here and pretend with anybody. I'm a Pan-Africanist at heart. I know that we need black autonomy to be able to control our own destiny. So we don't control our dollars and we don't control our future. And shout out and kudos to these kids, you know, at the University of California system for seeing that we've got to take steps to control our destiny, to control our future. So shout out to them. Same thing with Columbia Divest. Those students, what they did was historic also, to be able to get Columbia University to divest from private prison profiting. So, you know, the kids will do it. And really a lot of what goes on with these children nowadays, you know, younger than college age and so forth, with this behavior that we see, fatalistic behavior and lack of care or concern for one another. Sometimes it appears destruction of property, destroying one another. These are all symptoms of individuals that don't see a promising future for themselves. You know, you'll find some of the most well-behaved, so to speak, individuals are those who can't wait to get a piece of their future. When you've got someone that knows they have a gift of playing the piano, let's say, that person is not going to be likely to be out here taking chances with their life. They sure ain't gonna be out here playing games with their fingers, because they know they have a gift and they've got an opportunity. So they want to reach out into their future and control their own destiny. And that's what we see uniformly amongst our children, the black community in particular. You know, these kids are not bad. They're not crazy. They're not, you know, learning disabled in any kind of way. They're not evil. They are without a future. And this is the part of what we're talking about. When you supporting Macy's over supporting the black business, you're supporting your children not having a future. There's just no two ways about that. There's just no way around it. So we need to continue to tear down Macy's operations, and shout out to those who actually did boycott over this holiday season. They felt the impact and they're underplaying it. I'm sure it was much worse than what they've reported. And we're going to have to look forward to several years of boycotting in the future and continue to not hear much said about the effect of it, but we have to keep doing it because we know that we are crippling them. So outside of that, I've got another few stories here that I'll look at right quick, and I'll post the links to these in the little chat box here in the forum, so you all can look also at your leisure at what I'm seeing. And again, I'll remind you, if you're just coming in, or if you were here, maybe you weren't able to catch all of what I was saying, I would remind you to set up Google alerts for yourself for, the private prison companies like Geo Group, CCA, Corrections Corporation of America, MTC, Management and Training Corporation, Horizon Healthcare, mass incarceration, youth incarceration. Set up Google alerts for these things and just sit back and think to yourself, what are the names or what are titles that will give you information on these types of topics? And there's more than enough out there. As I said, I've got, over 2,500 emails in my inbox at any given time about all of these different types of topics. And the information that's out there is astounding. But what we don't hear is our friends and our loved ones and our relatives, our co-workers. We don't hear our pastors. I'll say that again, since tomorrow is Sunday. A lot of people will be going to church tomorrow. We don't hear our pastors speaking out on these issues that so obviously impact many, many people in the church. A lot of those people are standing there at that altar and asking for prayer for loved ones that are locked up right now, that are on their way, that are facing plea deals. There's a lady on my Facebook friends list who is posting every day over the last few weeks about her son facing, major time. And I'm not 100% sure if it was drug related or some kind of violence or something, but she claims he's such a good kid and he was on his way to college and he's doing all these things and he just made a bad decision and got caught in something and he's in the grips of the system now. Well, it's not always to our benefit. I would say it's not that often to our benefit for us to wait until we've got our foot in the snare before we care about the snare. It's to our benefit as citizens, regardless of your race, your creed, your color, your religion, your political philosophy, your education degree, your financial situation, any of these things, it's to your benefit. It's health to your life for you to be interested in what kind of snares are out there in the road. I need to be proactive and make sure I'm able to step around them. And actually, I want to be a part of something that helps to remove them from the road entirely. Because there may be one who's innocently enough just walking down that path and don't see it and get caught in it. And there goes somebody who's lost their life. And this is what's going on in our country. So I'm sorry that the sister is seeing her child so close, to being put away. But every day her commentary about it shows that our people don't know enough about what's really troubling us. And this is where it's a good opportunity for our churches, these pastors, to make a tie-in to the contemporary information, the what's going on in the world, to help to teach us about modern slavery as it compares to the old slavery. Teach about the children of God, the children of Israel. If you're a Christian, talk about these stories that are in the Bible and people that were imprisoned and enslaved, and compare between who those people were then and who those people now. Look at yourself and see that you are continually being persecuted by the same enemy. So being ignorant of these things and being dismissive of these things and trying to pretend like this is not what's going on is not going to help anybody. When your child, God forbid, gets caught in some, situation like this, it's going to be too late for you to want to start trying to learn how to help him. Because this lady was talking about her son's situation of being, of having his court date coming. And then within the next couple of days, she's talking about he's facing a plea. He's got a decision to make. And I'm thinking to myself, sister, if you just only knew. And of course, you could try to reach out to people and, you want to talk to them or what have you. But then people have to choose if they want to talk back, if they want to hear what you're saying. And maybe you can help them, but they have to be receptive of what you're trying to teach them. In the United States of America, we maintain about a 97% conviction rate in the federal courts based on plea deals, plea bargains. In the state courts, around 94% conviction rates of the convictions are based on plea deals. That should be enough for a suspension of judicial proceeding on some kind of scale in this country until we figure out what's going on, because that's obviously a corruption of the spirit and the nature and even the word letter of the law. You have a constitutional right to a fair trial before a jury of your peers. You have a constitutional right to a speedy trial. These are things that are not occurring in this country, to the point that 97% of convictions are occurring or coming from plea deals. A plea deal is not a fair trial. A plea deal is a prosecutor with the entire power of facilities of law enforcement of all phases. Once you become a person involved with the court, face it. The security guard at the gas station across the street from the court and everybody on up to the US Marshals, the Attorney General on down, can take you into custody if you somehow escape or you somehow found a way to get away from them to not face this prosecution. Any of these people can bring you in and make you face this trial that they're supposedly going to give you fairly. So that's a lot of people against you, one individual. That's what the prosecutor has. The prosecutor has the entirety of the law at their disposal to throw at you. They've got the police's investigations, which they manipulate regularly, the crime labs, the forensics that they manipulate all the time, the judges, the clerks, the witnesses, the everything. They manipulate all of it, and they'll take you in there on a charge of possession of some controlled substance. You have weed, and they say they got you with the weed. They're going to take you away. By the time you meet that prosecutor, they may throw 50 charges at you. And that's how they're going to approach you in that cell, in that conference room. Well, I've got 50 charges I'm going to throw against the wall and see what sticks. And when I get you out there in front of that jury, in front of that judge, those 50 charges are going to make you look like a criminal that you are. And if you don't take this plea deal right now, if you make me go to trial with you, if you make me come at you with all the guns blazing, this little 5 years that you're going to do over this possession, I'll get you 100 years. You think I'm joking? This is what these people do every day. This is what they do for a living. And people take the plea. In our country, we're one of the only countries on the planet, us and the Philippines, I think it is, that even has a bail system. So you got people that will get arrested over smoking a joint or just the car smell like weed. You might not even have anything. You get arrested Sandra Bland style. I tell people all the time, a tag light is probable cause. Them thinking that they don't see your tag light could be working. They pull you over anyway. Oh, I thought your tag light was off. Well, I thought I'd stop you anyway. So where you going? And there it goes from there. If you survive and you don't get killed and you get arrested and kidnapped and placed in their custody, well, now you got a situation where you got to figure out how to get out of it. And once you go in and until you post bail, you are looking at losing your job. How long can you stay off of work before you come back? You're looking at losing your family once the job is gone and the paychecks aren't coming in. Well, now there goes your rent, there goes your utilities, your phone's off, your child support behind, your car payment. This is the reality of the truth. If you've got 2 million people in the prison system, you've got 12.5 million going through the jail system all year round. City to city, your little tiny municipality and burgs all the way up to the major metro areas. This is the machine. When the police were killed last year in New York City, and the Pat Lynch came out and was talking about how they, the police are under attack, and the people, the Black Lives Matters, the supporting killing, all that crap came out. The cops had the blue flu. Cops said they wasn't going to work. Police went on strike, more or less, stop enforcing minor quality of life violations, stop enforcing broken windows, stop going after people over the smell of weed in the air, everybody in here going to jail. They stopped doing that. And it was not the police that really cared about going back. It was the court clerks. It was the bailiffs. It was all the people drawing overtime from working in the court, working in the system, getting money, getting paid, because they got so many people coming through every day. They just get paid. And when the cops wasn't producing all those people to go through that system, the city was losing something like $10 million a week. People, when we talk about modern day slavery, we are not joking. We are not speaking in metaphors. We're speaking in absolute facts. Slavery back in the day was based on finances. Slavery today is based on finances. It's the same thing. We got a couple of comments. Let me read these right quick and incorporate this into the conversation. Thomas Lynn, how do you respond to the stigma associated with calling for the abolition of the prison system or the conditioning whereby people simply assume that its existence is inevitable? Man, cognitive dissonance, sir, is a crippling dysfunction. It really is. It's sad. How do I respond to that stigma, though? You're talking about the police state propaganda game, the propaganda war that we're engaged in, where these people have effectively created a narrative and created an ethos around this, created an atmosphere, as it were, of incarceration. They did that. This country was not like that. The 1800s, the country was not like that. The 1900s, the country was not like that. And I want to tell you something else. The only way that it was allowed to become like that is because once the 1865, the Emancipation Proclamation came about, and as we've said, the 13th Amendment says clearly that neither slavery nor involuntary servitude, except as a punishment for a crime whereof the party shall have been duly convicted. Well, the first thing they did was built a state prison in South Carolina, for example, and several other state prisons were built around this time. So they were ready to go when they went ahead and decided to emancipate these slaves. They already had prisons set up and ready to go for them. The state of Alabama is a perfect example. In the states, the first wardens were the landowners of where they built the prison. So these people had no knowledge of penology. They had no understanding of incarceration or of laws or of state function of incarceration or surely not rehabilitation. It was a profit center. That was its original purpose. That's all it was ever put there for, was to be a profit center. And what they did was experimented with various types of trades that those convicts could do. Now, these were whites, because blacks were still slaves and were on their respective plantations or in whatever jobs that they were put into for free labor. So whites were trained and taught how to make horse tack, saddles and bits and stirrups and, the things of the day that people used on farming and in the various trades and jobs that they had, and traveling, transporting around through, horse and carriage systems. This was big business, in other words. This was huge business, and they taught them how to do it in the Alabama State Prison in like 1852, something like that, 54. And for those who understand, like how they bring up the Anthony Johnson, I think his name is, one of the first black slaveholders back in the day. The racists will always counter with, well, blacks were doing it too. Africans sold Africans into slavery, all this kind of thing. Well, there was a black man who was one of the first, I forget what his title was, but this brother was one of the first officials in the Alabama prison back even when slavery was still going. So, I mean, this shows you how this whole thing has to come together, for the pieces have to come together for it to work. But the point being, they had trained these whites to do this, and they produced a nice profit for the state and for this landowner over that time. And as soon as the Emancipation Proclamation was passed, the prison systems in every state where they had state prisons to that point, the prison systems, the populations went from 98% white to 70, 75, 80, 90% black overnight. This is a matter of fact. You can Google this right now. Google the population based by race of any state in the South that you choose. Start down that path, and you'll begin to see Tennessee, Alabama, Georgia, Florida, South Carolina, 98% white. 1864, 1866, 98% black. So I'm saying all this to say, this is how this country began to accept, answering Thomas's question in the long version, I apologize. But this is how this country began to accept and feed into the stigma of the prison system being inevitable, the existence being inevitable, and not understanding its true purpose, its true root, its true function. They just see it as a necessary thing because, look, people are so criminal. Even though the crime rates have been on a steady decline for over 20 years, 25 years. When we see the propaganda come from the other side and pushes this narrative of criminality, what you have to understand is that black criminality is the currency, like not only financially, but the energy necessary to keep white supremacy alive and running and functioning in every imaginable way, shape, and form. This is a scapegoat culture. This is a scapegoat mentality in those that founded this country. that the indigenous people were savages, so they needed to be civilized. They were savages. They didn't have our God. They didn't serve a God. They didn't know better. They ate animals raw. I mean, every kind of ridiculous, characterization, character assassination that you could ever dream of was placed against, non-white individuals, and even at that time, poor whites. So what happened? Okay, hello, Jeff. We'll let you in here in just a second. So what happens is you see, Africans. Oh, well, they were swinging from trees and living in mud huts in the jungle, and they were, cannibals and in the dark country and whatever. This is what allows people to justify savage treatment. And it still goes on today. I'm only saying this not to get anybody stirred up, but just to show you that this is the parallel, that there's nothing has changed. You still have to criminalize. You still have to demonize. When you saw Trayvon Martin killed, he was criminalized in his, post-mortem. Tamir Rice criminalized, the 12-year-old kid in the park. This kid was in the park playing, but he was playing with a toy gun that looks so real. I mean, it's his own fault. What is he doing in the park playing with a toy gun? Man, I walked around with a Red Ryder BB gun from age 8 to 18. Shooting at birds and flower pots and whatever, stop signs or whatever I could. I'm sorry, JJ, try again there, man. Come on in. So I'm just saying that the criminality is the thing that they do. The criminalization is the MO of the people that would be your oppressors. Good evening, sir.
How are you?
Doing well, thanks. How about yourself?
I'm doing very well, and I'm glad to hear you talking about all the. Oh, there's a serious echo here.
Okay. It sounds clear on my end, so you can go ahead if you can tolerate yourself.
Yeah. No, I appreciate your bringing up this topic about the prison system and all the horrors involved. Mm-hmm. And I know there's a huge disparity racially with who's incarcerated as far as a lot more blacks and a lot more minorities than whites. But I was just wondering, though, the extent to which you think it's totally racially motivated, or do you think it's the prison industrial complex just sort of seems to serve so many commercial interests?
Right.
Is it really just an act of prejudice or anything like that, or is it just a general corruption in the system that tends to unfortunately impact minorities more so than other groups?
Honestly, I believe that it's enough of both, that it's something that is very easy for people to allow to continue. I think it's a persecution according to racial lines, based strictly along with the 13th Amendment itself. So yes, there's other aspects, and I'm not at all trying to say that the only thing is the 13th Amendment, the only thing, but it is such a huge factor. And the reason I say that is because the 13th Amendment is enforced by law enforcement. They are the primary enforcers of the exception is law enforcement. So when you go back to the roots of law enforcement in this country, they started out as slave catchers and enforcers for plantations. Out of work, poor, the lowest class whites were the ones that were hired by landowners and the wealthy 1% of that era to enforce the race-based laws, to enforce the putting down slave revolts and this type of thing. So that tradition is rooted in fact, and it continues now. And the 13th Amendment is enforced by the police. Now, the 13th Amendment was intended for Africans in America. That's why it's called a reconstructive amendment. It was designed to repair, to reconstruct, to try to reconstruct the lives that were damaged by the inhumanity of slavery. So that exception was placed into the 13th Amendment for the intentions to specifically re-enslave those freed Africans. So in as much as these are the fundamental facts about that exception, we have to accept that that's what makes it so effective against people of color still to this day.
Except that it applies to people of all races.
Yes.
In the prison system.
Yes, it does. But as much as you see a disparity in the policing of areas, based on race, we can get into the specifics of the forcing of vice into certain neighborhoods during the post-World War II era, for example. That was a directive of the federal government at one point. That was a directive of local municipal policing organizations to push all of your vice into where the immigrants are. Push all of your vice, like basically rope off these suburban areas. You can have your prostitution. You can have your juke joints, your heroin spots, or what. You can have your crime, but just make sure it doesn't go on in this area. And once that became generationally enforced and impacted generations of people, it became a thing where it was okay to say that the ghettos is where everything bad happens, and that we can bring in stormtroopers to police these people where all the bad things happen. Right. So can you see how it's built up?
I can. I'm just trying to connect some of the dots that you're connecting as far as the 13th Amendment as being like architected to achieve what is going on today. And I totally agree with you. And I think the criminalization of victimless crimes over the past century with alcohol and stuff like that, that's all of these things have been used to round up people and put them in cages and have that they're allowed to have a kind of a slave labor kind of situation.
Not kind of. If I
no, you're right. You're right.
Absolutely. Right. Yes. When the 13th Amendment says that slavery is abolished except for being a punishment for a crime, that's all we're talking about in the abolitionist movement of today. That's all we focus on with bringing in the 13th Amendment, is that you put a financial incentive in front of someone when you say, okay, you can have your slaves as long as you can get them convicted of a crime.
Right.
Well, when you turn around,
it's a really interesting take. I never had thought of it that way. Yeah. It's a really good take. I'm actually one who thinks the 13th Amendment negates taxes. Taxes. You when you're taxed, you in effect don't own a certain amount of your labor. It's taken away from you by force. I think that's actually in violation of the 13th Amendment too. So I'm kind of an extremist on that in some ways, but I hadn't thought of it in the way that you're presenting it. But it's interesting.
Well, let me just say, when you tie that to, I mean, it's not just that theory, but when you tie it to the factual practices of corporations, for example, like private prison corporations, who do in fact pay to place their own created legislation into the hands of our legislators.
No, I agree.
I mean, these people literally write the law and then carry it over to their favorite politician and put the money on the table that they can track. And then, of course, the money under the table you never know about, and then give them a job when their term is up in office as some high-ranking, high-paid, a lot of stock options guy or girl.
Yeah, no. I wrote in the side chat before I came on, the prison industrial complex. That's a real thing. It's definitely there's a huge amount of labor that's derived from incarcerated people, and it's also noteworthy. We can't go without saying that among the world's prison populations, the U.S. is over 20% of the world's 25%. It's close to 25%. You're right. Of the world's prison population, and yet only has only 5% of the world's actual population, and we're over communist China and all these other supposedly horrible places, which are horrible in their own way. But this is really dreadful. The amount of people that are in U.S. prison cages is horrendous, and I appreciate your pointing this out. I'm glad you did this blab. I hope people become more aware of this situation, and it can happen. It's not just some abstract thing; it can happen to anyone. And I would caution people thinking it just can happen to people of other ethnic groups from your own. It can happen to anyone. You can be ensnared in this system quite easily regardless of what ethnicity you might be or nationality. Absolutely. But to your point, it has most definitely impacted blacks and minorities far worse than the average white, and that's why I think people who are pro civil rights and stuff like that ought to really be the most vocal against like they should be the most vocal against like these victimless crimes like drugs and stuff like that.
Right. But historically, we've seen them be the greatest mouthpieces for further terrorization of these communities.
Yeah, and that's horrific.
And this is the thing. This is the point I want to bring up from. We mentioned Naomi Murakawa earlier in this blab. We were talking about some of the loudest and most forthright and truthful voices against the prison system. These are individuals who have said outright that, slavery was not abolished. There's a lady, professor and an attorney named Angela Chan from San Francisco area that had a Huffington Post article that went pretty wide, where she said outright and explained, that slavery was never abolished. And from this same premise, Naomi Murakawa is a Princeton professor of, I believe, African studies. She wrote a book called The First Civil Right that discusses how the liberals are really the ones who constructed the prison industrial complex, even though most would imagine, so-called racist, white conservatives would be the ones behind it, but actually liberals are the ones. And one thing, a quote from that book that I always carry around with me, and I think it speaks to the problem very well. She says, liberal racial pity, which is really all liberalism is pity of, these poor people. Liberal racial pity mirrors conservative racial contempt. And as mirror images, they are competing in partisan frames, and they lock blackness to criminality. And if you really think about it, that's all that really happens when you say these civil rights people or what have you. All they do is mirror what the conservatives or the racists, the reactionaries, they just mirror what they say. They just say, okay, well, we know that that's the case. What you're saying is true.
It's just condescension. Yeah.
Right. There's no one that just comes out and denies what these people are saying is true. They say it's true, but let's help them.
Right. So I wasn't a fan of the George Bush regime, but one quote that he had, which I'm sure somebody wrote for him, that I thought was so magnificent. He said, the soft racism of low expectations. Yeah. I just thought that was the most wonderful and spot on way of describing a sort of leftist racism.
Yes, because those low expectations, it creates a certain mindset. And we'll get old Thomas in here now. He's put up several questions. I tried to answer them kind of by proxy with my ramblings or what have you, but he can come in directly into the conversation here, and hopefully it will continue to go well here. But yes, those low expectations. Good evening, sir.
Oh, hello. I'm sorry about my audio.
Hey, Thomas.
Audio here. Hey, JJ. JJ was kind enough to jump in a blab I did 2 weeks ago.
Yeah, I think yes. I think we've spoken before.
Mm-hmm. And I just wanted to again reiterate. Apologies if my audio here is suboptimal. No, but I just wanted to make a point quickly in conjunction with your allusion to Murakawa and other people about the problems of liberalism. And I think that there's an intimate relationship between what's going on with the prison industrial complex and capitalism itself, and the framework of the wage relationship. But you kind of have to go out of your way to find a really digging critique of that problem. And liberals, as a rule, don't want to challenge that. They want to leave intact the market framework, usually appealing to something like Keynesianism, without really acknowledging that the basis of surplus value production and of profit is itself exploitive. And in that respect, slavery, while it finds its most sort of egregious expression in things like prison labor, is actually deeply integral to the market economy itself. Yes. And so if you really want to move beyond this, situation, this impasse where we find ourselves, we have to start re-envisioning our relationship with the world materially. But it becomes very difficult because we become sort of detained by the idea that this commitment is an inexorable one. And
yeah,
so,
I actually, if you don't mind, I'd like to disassociate myself with those comments. I don't think that I don't think the prison system, the system is totally a statist system. I don't think it has anything to do with capitalism in the sense of the free market. The free market is not about prisons and about government installations and any kind of restrictions of trade or using violence or force against people. Capitalism or free markets, as I prefer to call them, because of the confusion that results, it's about voluntary trade. So that's
In
not.
theory. You agree what you're saying is all in
Well,
theory.
yes, I am talking about theoretical,
Right.
but the
Right.
theoretical is not irrelevant here.
No.
So when you have a government system whereby there are forced prisons and armies and police that are enforcing this, that's not the free market at all. That's not voluntary exchange. And I just want to make that important decision. This is not about. This is not an expression of people's free choices in the marketplace. It's an expression of force and violence and politics. It's not the marketplace.
I agree with what you're saying. Thomas, you're kind of fading out. Thomas, can you hear him, JJ?
yeah,
Yeah. No, he's
If he can hear us, then he'll eventually get that we
he's
can't.
going to
really
audio only, so maybe we'll hear him better.
Let me just say, in somewhat in response or attempting to respond to what you're saying, I don't disagree. Again, that this is in theory, this is ideal, and I do agree that there is that theory is relevant. But I also feel like the overwhelming truth about the matter is that capitalism was introduced as a theory and as an ideal only through slavery, in the earliest history of the what has expanded to become the empire, that is even now. So I think the theory sounds fine as long as there was always a supply of people that could be
No, that's not true. No, that's not the case at all. Capitalism is about voluntary trade. That's what capitalism is.
But I'm saying, when has that been implemented? We
can talk about when it has been realized or not. That's a separate issue. But what capitalism is voluntary exchange.
I agree with the definition.
So whether or not it existed in a given time or not is something to talk about, but it's not to say it was capitalism because it happened at a certain time. It's capitalism if it's voluntary trade. If it's not voluntary trade, it's statism in one form or another. And if people are being enslaved and being not allowed to trade voluntarily, that's not capitalism. So,
right, and that's why
we don't want to call something that's not capitalism. That's all I'm saying.
And I agree with you entirely, and that's why I can't separate this financial aspect, the financial incentive of modern day slavery that's found in that 13th Amendment from the larger problem. But I mean, and even though on a larger scale globally, when you look at the materials the material wealth and resources that is produced by the continent of Africa, for example, still greatly under colonialized methods. I mean, sure, the people look like they're running their own thing, but a lot of these countries pay directly into, like France's coffers. They pay eternally into these European companies' bank accounts.
But that's colonialism. That's not capitalism.
But that's the root of the capitalism that they represent in their own individual economies and on the world economy overall. France doesn't come to the table and say, okay, we're a part of the European Union based on our colonial aspect. They say they say that they have a free market capitalism there as well. The United States.
Yeah, so the communists said they had freedom there too, but we would have a more rigorous definition of freedom, and we would say no, that's not freedom. That's not what you have, and we should. I think Socrates said the the epitome of wisdom is to call things what they are. So if it's capitalism, call it capitalism and criticize it as such. But if it's not free trade, if it's not free voluntary trade, then don't call it capitalism. Call it mercantilism, which is or corporatism, which is mostly what is going on in the world today. It's where you have corporate interests that are using the government, somebody has a lot of feedback there.
Yes, I believe it's Thomas, because I muted him.
Yeah. If you could mute, please, while you're not talking. But if we're talking about where there's not free trade going on, or that it's so badly distorted, then we need to call it something else. There are other names for it. Let's not call it capitalism. Let's not confuse ourselves by calling it that. So that's my point.
I agree. Thomas, welcome back.
Yeah, sorry I cut out, and because the audio is so bad, I'll probably drop out and then just make comments and messages after this. I just want to say that on the two off point, but I think it would be helpful to.
We lost him again.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Your audio's you're really.
This
yeah, we're losing them.
Yeah, sorry. Your bandwidth is really not good, I guess, where you are.
No, what?
Yeah, we can't. He's
free involuntary exchange.
Yeah, he's struggling. To what you're saying though, I don't feel like we're going too far off on a tangent. As I heard him, kind of beginning to say, I think that all of this is relevant to trying to find a way, if that's what the purpose is. I mean, for me, I know I speak for myself. My reason for going into these kind of different directions and being willing to reveal as much as we can is because ultimately I still see the same root issue. And if one of the issues I struggle with as an abolitionist is to, of course, fight against cognitive dissonance. People just don't believe that it is what it is. So we're continuing to push evidence at them. We're continuing to push the facts. We're continuing to produce the court cases current, historical, what's projected for the future. We're looking at competing laws that are going on, that are being enforced against other activist movements. Right now, we were talking about there's a law actually against animal rights activists. It's a federal law that was beefed up over the last few years, which actually states in its letter of the law that if you protest or cause a protest or boycott of a corporation and they're able to substantiate that you negatively affected their bottom line profits, that's a violation of a federal law now. So that could very easily roll over from animal rights activism into abolitionism.
I think they're using the RICO laws, which are horrible. They were meant to go against organized crime, and now they're used against any kind of activist group. Yeah, that's horrific. Yeah.
So this is what we're struggling to get across to the average person, because as I was saying in the beginning of this, the blab tonight, is the average person in my circle, whether it's family, friends, coworkers, people I've known from school, whatever, people that know me through social media or in the real world or whatever, know this is what I talk about. This is what we work towards. This is what I'm involved in. The other guys that host the New Abolitionist radio program that we do every Wednesday for the last 4.5-5 years, their lives are the same way. And we all know thousands of people that know this about us. But on a given day, I will never hear anyone speak about any of these issues. Isn't that amazing? Isn't that amazing? I mean, people know
agree,
they don't talk about it.
Yeah, I totally agree. I mean, the fact that so many are incarcerated and so many are profiting, and yet, we
don't talk about it. We just saw a gubernatorial race in Florida last year between Charlie Crist and Rick Scott. These guys are both noted, like it's obvious and known their history is both of them are tied to the private prisons. They've both been paid by private prisons, huge sums of money. These are the only two choices that you had for governor in that state, though.
Yeah.
I mean, the entire state of Florida, I don't understand how the people are not rioting down there and tearing down their governmental system just in their state, in their Department of Corrections. 2014, they had over 250 deaths in custody.
Yeah, so on another hangout, I was just taken to the woodshed for some guy actually dropped off because I was talking about not voting as being a way to express oneself. Yeah, a protest, and he just hung up. But this is a classic example. You have two candidates who are both advocating the prison industrial complex. Why would you vote for either one of them? And if you voted for one, you're legitimizing them in that way. So my point was, not voting is a way of expressing yourself.
Right.
And
you're not giving your consent.
Rage quit the hangout, but I think hopefully he listened on, and it was a blab. Hopefully he listened on, and maybe next time around he'll think about that more. But these are the choices we're presented with, and these lobbies and these interests have very powerful constituencies, and they will make sure that there are two candidates. They probably donate to both candidates.
Yes. Yes.
So
I'll put a link. Excuse me, I'll put a link in the chat in the box over here when I can pull it up again. There's a website called Muckety, MUCKETY.com, and what they do is investigate the connections, corporate connections. Whether it's between politicians, banks, corporations, what have you. And when you put in into the Muckety search engine, Corrections Corporation of America or the Geo Group, just as two examples, they will give you a long line going back 20 years of the contributions that both of those companies have made, to the maximum amount that you can on the table contribute to both political parties up and down the line, House representatives, senators, congressmen of all sorts or whatever, governors, low level politicians, whoever. They give 25, 50, 75, 100, whatever they can get away with for decades. They don't care who gets in there. They own any of them whenever they get in. And again, these people write the legislation and then hand carry it with the briefcase of money or whatever they take as their incentive. And then they carry it right on into the state legislature and get that pushed right on through. And now next year, you see an additional 5,000 people end up incarcerated. And then out of those additional 5,000, they've already got 50,000 in the state overall. You see 250 of them die under mysterious circumstances, denial of health care, denial of medication.
That's why they don't want the drug war to. They don't want the drug war to end, because you can get really highly qualified people, low turnover, into the prison industrial complex. You have all this forced slave labor, and I would argue, I'm sorry, but I think it's not just black. I think it's white too, but probably mostly black. But you have this really highly skilled labor force that they can't quit, and this is a huge interest, and that's why the states are starting to overturn these idiotic drug laws that have been going on for decades. But the central government is holding on, and they're only going to be able to hold on for a certain amount of time, just like they couldn't hold on to slavery forever. They couldn't hold on to enforcing.
Well, they had to morph it. They had to give up individuals' control of it and give it to the state. Because in states like, for example, in Kansas, where there was no slavery, that's the motto of the state, the free state. When they ratified the 13th Amendment, well, they just became a slave state because they didn't have slavery at all. And then they said, well, you can have slavery if you can convict a person of a crime. So this is the tricknology, as they would say, of how they were able to do that.
And exactly. And the central government was actually through Dred Scott and the Supreme Court. They were actually strengthening slavery. Everybody said the North was so great, but the North was they were enforcing the fugitive slave laws. Yes, and actually a lot of the secession movement was in the North. They didn't want to enforce the fugitive slave laws. There were various counties in Wisconsin and Connecticut. They wanted to secede. They didn't want to enforce this at all. And so this sort of sanitized version of history that we get, but it does repeat itself. And you're very right. Reconstruction was horrible for blacks and whites, and of course then we had Jim Crow, and the state has just been awful. And you want them to be out of out of any of this stuff, and this is really the problem. So
yeah, indeed.
And now we have a new flavor. We just have different flavors of the same thing. So now it's the prison complex, as you have pointed out very well. So
we've got another question from Tom here, since he was not able to stay in the video feed here. He says, would you say there's a relationship between the terms of race and class? He had a question before that, but I don't know how to operate the scroll on this thing. It kind of scrolled down past. It's talking about the between capitalism and, okay, we talked about that a little bit, but I guess I'll ask you too, JJ, what do you think, or what would you say is the relationship between the terms of race and class? In your opinion, what do you have?
Well, in different countries, for example, class has to do with elitism and stuff, and it can transcend race. So what you would want, and I think in the U.S. it's this part of the is pretty good actually. In the U.S. There is sort of an economic class system, so people on the high end of the economic system obviously have certain advantages and stuff like that. But the nice thing about a place like the U.S. and most places in the West is that it's not a caste system. It's not racially defined so much, at least explicitly. It's not. It's more. You can move from one class to another. So a person can be. Like when I first got married, I was in the lower class. I was poor. But now I'm in the middle class or upper middle class. I'm in my 50s, and I've, amassed a certain amount of wealth, not a huge amount, but I'm in the middle class or the upper middle class. So it's not so being in a class system isn't so terrible as long as you can move back and forth according to your desires. So that's kind of the case in the West. So that's different, I think, from like India, where if you're in a certain family, you're definitely in a certain caste, and it's very hard to move from one class to another. Or if you're in some sort of a feudal system, it's really hard to move around. But yeah, there's probably a class system everywhere, but
right.
I don't think the key question is whether or not there's a class system. I think that's probably true of any place, but how the question is how freely can you move from one to the other? So,
well, I mean, I have to agree with you. I don't feel like there's anything really out of line with what you said, or that I can't see. It sounds perfectly the same on my end as well. Cool. I think some of the elements that we talked about, so far, that are specific to race and rather unfortunate are the need. Again, it's just tough to get away from that scapegoat situation. The need to criminalize, the need to, when you've got like in the Django movie, kind of introduced to people that maybe hadn't heard of that before, the phrenology. The idea of phrenology, the study of the brain size,
the brain shapes, and
this kind of thing. The need to demonize, criminalize, objectify, some kind of way dehumanize individuals so that you can justify you're taking advantage of, whatever their land is, their name is, their culture is, their whatever.
Right.
I think that still plays a big deal into our situations now. I really do. I don't think it's enough to justify any person individually failing. I think there's enough room for you to do something like you said yourself, coming from not where you're at now, but significantly beneath that, and able to go up and, be comfortable where you're at. I think that opportunity is there for every individual, but I think along race lines, it's less likely. And there are more systems that are institutional systems that will prevent masses of non-whites from being able to do those same things. And I think that does have some effect based on, like hyper policing of certain areas. Like we talked about the funneling of vice into non-white neighborhoods, that has generationally had an effect on people that come from those areas. you're going to have more. It's like a fishing hole. Let's say if you've got more bait in a certain area, more fish are going to come there. And
right,
eat the bait,
right.
So
I mean, like more people, like more white people use illegal drugs than black people, but it's much more easy to catch. There's more people dealing drugs in certain confined geographic areas, and that's where they get caught, and they can go after that. And also, the white affluent areas or the black affluent areas, of which there are many. Those are areas where they wouldn't tolerate it as much. It wouldn't be as politically popular. But as long as it's going on with people who are economically on the low end of the poll, people don't care so much about it. And I don't know that is. I think that would be true regardless of the racial makeup, but it happens to be more minority. So that's kind of.
And this is what the Department of Justice reports have laid out clearly, in every city that they've investigated. This is the
so-called Department of Justice.
Well, right. But I mean, even with it, and I trust me, I have no love, for the apparatus, itself. Right. But the reports say what the reports say, and these are not like government suits that come in and write up some biased, details, accounts of what they think is going on. These are individuals who are on the ground previous to their feds arriving, and they're providing records and information. They're providing testimony. They're providing, the minutes to, like in the Ferguson report, they based their findings on the actual minutes of, the reports from the city's planning meetings. And they were able to substantiate that in the city planning meetings as far back as 2012, there were city council members that sat there and told the city manager at that time, this persecution of this 27,000 people in this city of Ferguson has got to stop. We can't keep, racial profiling these drivers. We can't keep giving people quality of life tickets for improper use of the roadway if they're not on this part of the sidewalk. We can't keep giving people tickets over their grass being too tall if it's a quarter inch. I mean, these are the kind of violations, parking tickets that would go from $75, a person couldn't pay it, to, okay, well, now you got to go to court and it's double. And if you don't pay it in 2 weeks, you're going to jail for a week. And this is something that was continually going on there. It's not like outlier cases. These are the majority of the policing incidents amongst the police and people of color. This is what was happening to them. Yeah. So when they showed the minutes from those meetings where city council members were saying, look, my people want us to do something to stop this. We've got other cities that are having success using work programs where the people can work for the city, do some kind of cleanup or do some kind of community service and pay off these fines. Can we implement something like this? The city manager is on record as telling them, no, we're not going to do that. In fact, we're going to have the chief of police here go ahead and tell his boys to ramp it up. So they went from $1 million roughly a year in city municipal fines.
And that's politically popular.
$4 million. They went from $1 million in 2 years to $3.4 million by the time Michael Brown was killed. That was at the core of the rioting, as they say. Right. It wasn't about Michael Brown as much as the people were like, look, there's only 27,000 of us here, and you're making over $3.5 million a year off our backs and throwing us in jail on a regular basis. We have to drive to get to a job. There's no work in Ferguson.
Right.
You have to get on this road to leave, to drive 15, 20 minutes to wherever the jobs are. And every day is speed traps all up and down those roads. And those people are standing in lines 2 miles long trying to get into court. Right. This is persecution. And when the report can show that it's racial profiling, when they can show that it's race-based policing, when they can show that this in the traffic reports, the state attorney general has yearly racial profiling report in most states, in America. If you look it up, you can find the reports. And some states are more open than others. They'll give you details and whatnot. Some states, my state of Kansas, is not so detailed. If they find wrongdoing, then they'll open up that report and tell you. But in the general numbers, they don't really want to give you too many specifics until there's somebody been found guilty of something. In the state of Missouri, the city of Ferguson's report showed a number something like 12 times as likely were white drivers found with contraband, were white drivers found with suspended licenses while driving. But black drivers that were stopped were searched, 10 times more. and were arrested some crazy number of times more. So it's saying if you really are out here to stop crime, wouldn't you go after the person that you're finding contraband on more often than anybody else? But so this is where I'm saying, like, it's a class issue, yes, and unfortunately race is attached to it as well, and we have the numbers to show it. So at some point we need to start prosecuting these people that are doing these things, because like in Ferguson, all of these leaders were allowed to step down where they were found to be, you know, guilty. I mean, there was a judge that was notorious for giving his friends a break, and this same judge was quoted as saying that these people are not wanting to take responsibility, you know, for their lives. They don't want to take responsibility for their crimes. They don't want to pay. I'm going to put them in jail. And they found out he's giving people passes on speeding tickets, red light tickets, DUIs, all kind of different things. He's just letting people, his friends, they can go. He was able to step down, but he wasn't prosecuted. That's a criminal. That's a crime. You can't affect my quality of life for years and thousands of dollars, ruin my ability to make a living, ruin my ability to live indoors and take care of my children, pay my child support up to date, pay my life and health insurance, and create a future for my family, because you want to prove a point that I'm just not responsible. So for a $200 ticket, you turn it to $400. You tell me to be in court, and if I can't get in that 2-mile long line and you close the doors, oh, now there's a warrant out for my arrest. I get caught on my way home from work, I lose my job. What
the state does, and it's horrible.
We've got to use RICO against the cops. We need to be using RICO against these people. When you've got these reports that detail continuing criminal conspiracy to extort, to terrorize, to illegally police, to violate the constitutional rights of these people, I mean, the case is made right there clear, but we're not getting criminal charges against these people. They're getting a chance to leave their job, and they go work somewhere else, or go write a book, or go on a speaking tour, or do whatever.
Yeah, exactly. Like they beat somebody or whatever, and they get a couple of weeks paid vacation, and then we find out that there was no wrongdoing. So
we've got to start somewhere, man. It's got to start somewhere.
Yeah. Well, listen, I'm afraid I'm going to have to run, but we're
going to wrap it up here overall. But it's been wonderful, man. I appreciate
delightful talking to you, and keep up the good fight. I agree with you on most points.
Indeed.
Yeah, it was a pleasure.
It was a pleasure. I will, and for everyone that's still here, I'm going to spend the last few minutes, even though I'm going off the air, so to speak. I'm going to be putting up links in the chat box of a lot of the things that we talked about. I found that animal rights story that details what I was saying with that. I'm going to put up a few more of these links, and then I'm going to be signing out as well. We always say peace to the abolitionists and death to these oppressors, man. They got to go. So thanks everybody for joining us.
Peace.
Take care.
Take care.